President Lee Jae-myung has called for stronger Korea-Brazil business ties, identifying next-generation civil aircraft, critical minerals, and K-beauty as key areas for expanding economic cooperation during a meeting with the business leaders in Sao Paulo. SK hynix has extended its record-breaking run, posting an industry-leading 76% operating margin after reporting a second-quarter operating profit of 60.5 trillion won, fueled by robust demand for AI memory chips. The death toll from Japan's powerful earthquake in Kumamoto has climbed to 13 as rescue crews race to find survivors. And experts say the magnitude 7.1 quake was likely triggered by the reactivation of the same fault that caused the devastating 2016 Kumamoto disaster. President Lee Jae-myung has sought to deepen economic ties with Brazil, identifying aviation, critical minerals, and K-beauty as promising areas for bilateral cooperation. Our Presidential Office correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports from Sao Paulo.
Creating synergy in times of a fast-changing global order. That was President Lee Jae-myung at the Korea-Brazil Business Roundtable in Sao Paulo on Tuesday, noting the need to combine Brazil's critical minerals and clean energy with South Korea's advanced technology.
글로벌 불확실성이 높아질수록 서로의 강점을 활용해서 시너지를 낼 수 있는 파트너를 만나는 것이 그 어느 때보다도 중요합니다.
He said the two countries will seek more projects to work together, building upon their strategic partnership.
차세대 민항기 공동 개발을 포함해서 핵심 광물 분야의 공급망 협력, 또 선풍적 인기를 끌고 있는 K-뷰티까지 이 세 가지 분야에서 큰 성과를 만들 수 있을 것으로 기대합니다.
Calls for expanded cooperation were echoed by Brazil's Vice President Geraldo Alckmin.
We must not merely focus on increasing the trade volume. It's important to create more added value, strengthen the production chain, and make investment together.
Joining the meeting were dozens of business leaders from the two countries, including the chairman of the Federation of Korean Industries, Ryu Jin, Hyundai Motor Group chairman Chung Ui-sun, and the head of Apex Brazil, Vladimir Müller, who is in charge of promoting trade and investment. 7 corporate MOUs were signed, including those on aerospace, digital healthcare, and critical minerals.
President Lee said that business cooperation would not be easy if governments do not resolve issues related to tariffs and regulations. He designated me for communication with Vice President Alckmin, solely dedicated to coordinating these issues.
President Lee once again noted the need for the Korea-Mercosur trade agreement, having agreed on Monday with his Brazilian counterpart Lula da Silva to speed up resuming negotiations. Later in the day, Lee visited a metal workers' union office in Sao Paulo, where Lula used to work as union president decades ago after working as a metal worker in his early career. After wrapping up his state visit to Brazil, President Lee will head to Chile for a 2-day official visit to meet his Chilean counterpart, Jose Antonio Cost. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News, Sao Paulo.
And President Lee's tour of Brazil, Chile, and Argentina is highlighting Latin America's importance to Korea's economic security. Our Oh Soo-young joins us in the studio to examine the opportunities in trade, critical minerals, and renewable energy, and the obstacles still standing in the way. Welcome, Soo-young.
Hi, Tammy. It's great to be here.
Soo-young, so what is the broader significance of the tour, and where are the main opportunities?
Hi, thanks for the question. So beyond bilateral beyond the bilateral relationship, this tour, it really could go beyond, it could really expand Korea's economic reach beyond its traditional partners and build a stronger presence across the global south. The three countries together represent around 280 million people and $3.7 trillion in economic output. Now, the Blue House says that Brazil holds the world's second largest rare earth reserves, while Chile ranks first in copper and lithium reserves, and Argentina has the second largest shale gas resources. Now, that creates opportunities to connect Latin American resources with Korea's strengths in batteries, aerospace, defense, and advanced manufacturing.
AI needs electricity, And electricity involves everything from various types of power generation equipment to energy storage systems. These are all primary commodities, and these countries possess most of them. Chile has copper. Argentina and Chile have lithium. Brazil is a country that has everything.
Also, this does come at a time of growing geopolitical and economic uncertainty, rendering it crucial for Korea to secure its supply chains.
More important than trade is diversifying energy supply chains and critical minerals, and cooperating in future industries. Latin America can be an optimal alternative partner, especially when the Middle East and the Strait of Hormuz have shown the need to diversify Korea's energy portfolio.
Then, Soo-young, among the various sectors, I'd like to ask, why has energy cooperation been highlighted as a key area of cooperation?
Well, industry experts say that Latin America not only offers abundant sunshine and wind, but also the ways to convert them into electricity. And researchers found that renewable power in parts of the region can cost roughly half as much as in South Korea. A 2024 World Bank study also estimated Brazil's technical offshore wind potential at more than 1,200 gigawatts. Now, that's around 14 times the capacity installed worldwide in that same year. The wider goal would be to link renewable generation with hydrogen and mineral processing.
Really important, and first of all, a jointly developed solar and wind capacity that that powers both green hydrogen production and low carbon mining operations would be crucial. And second, use that clean power for a lithium processing so that Chile export not raw brine but a low-carbon battery materials, which is exactly what Korean battery makers need, is which is also the second part.
Now, this kind of model would give Korean manufacturers a diversified source of low-carbon battery materials, while also allowing Chile to retain more processing investment as well as employment.
Well, Soo-young, of course, cooperation is always easier said than done. What are the key issues to consider now?
Right, so we always talk about the potential, but the key challenge here is really turning that commercial interest into actual commitments. And Professor Kim's study of more than 100 Korean firms and public bodies found that 40% recognized Latin America's importance, but few had actually moved to launch projects.
In part, and mainly because of a lot of uncertainty, right? Political uncertainty and lack of information, and institutional issues such as the permitting and land dispute are their major concerns.
The strategy of investing locally is more effective in the Brazilian market than exporting and selling there, because tariffs and other taxes are so high that the moment a product is exported, it tends to lose its price competitiveness. So it is very important to find a good local partner and enter through investment.
I see. Both opportunities and challenges lie ahead. Soo-young, thanks for coming in tonight.
Thanks for inviting me.
SK hynix is poised for another record-breaking quarter, driven by surging demand for AI chips. Though investors are becoming increasingly cautious about how long the rapid growth can continue. Park Junan has more.
Korean semiconductor titan SK hynix has once again rewritten its own history. According to preliminary figures, the company's second quarter revenue reached around 79.3 trillion won, or roughly $54.5 billion. This extends its record-breaking earnings streak to 5 consecutive quarters. Operating profit reached 60.54 trillion won. What is even more remarkable is the operating margin, which pushed past the historic 72% mark set in the first quarter to reach 76% in the second. The profit growth continues to be fueled by explosive global demand for AI-related memory chips, especially next-generation high-bandwidth memory, or HBM, supplied to global big tech companies. With supply remaining tight, long-term supply contracts for both premium DRAM and NAND flash have allowed the company to maintain strong pricing power. Despite the company's undisputed record earnings, its stock price, along with those of many global memory chip makers, has plunged by over 50% from its June high, when it nearly reached 3 million won per share. This is because market watchers have started to question whether the company's growth momentum may begin to face limits going forward.
If I had to point to a reason, it's that the earnings didn't quite meet the market's expectations. There were also expectations for stronger shareholder return measures, but there weren't any major announcements on that front. At the same time, concerns remain over whether AI companies can generate sufficient returns on their capital spending, and that is continuing to weigh on sentiment toward the semiconductor cycle.
While the company said it will double its memory production capacity by 2030, the base effect from quarters of explosive growth, combined with potential macroeconomic headwinds, could cap further gains in the second half of the year. Park Junan, Arirang News.
In the meantime, Korea's stock market is shaking under an extraordinary wave of volatility, with the trading halts being triggered at a record frequency. Now, financial authorities are now pledging a full review of capital market structures to contain the chaos. Our Baek Joo-hee reports.
On Wednesday, the KOSPI plunged to the mid-5,000s and closed at 5,663.24, down by 5.98%. The Kosdaq also suffered heavy losses, falling 6.12% to end at 662.68. A sharp plunge in both futures and spot prices triggered level 1 circuit breakers twice on each of the KOSPI and Kosdaq markets. These circuit breakers come when the market plunges by 8% over a 1-minute period. When this happens, the market is paused for 20 minutes. And the plunge of over 16% in the space of just 2 sessions is a massive reversal for a market that was recently reaching historic heights. President Lee Jae-myung's pledge of KOSPI 5,000 became reality just 7 months into his term. From there, the rally accelerated, surging over 80% in just 20 weeks to an all-time intraday high of 9,385.59 on June 19th. But the market reversed just as fast. In about 6 weeks, the index gave back all of those gains, plunging around 39% down back to the 5,000 level. And this unprecedented wave of volatility has brought with it frequent market halts. Since they were introduced in 1998, Korea's circuit breakers had only tripped 18 times over the next 26 years. However, they have already been activated 13 times this year alone so far, peaking with unprecedented consecutive dual market circuit breakers on both the KOSPI and Kosdaq on Tuesday and Wednesday. During the presidential tour in Sao Paulo, Presidential Chief of Staff for Policy Kim Yong-bom addressed the root causes behind the abnormal price swings. Kim noted that while the fundamental demand for the AI revolution remains intact, market doubts over big tech's revenue sustainability and new supply shocks from Chinese memory makers, such as the listing of Changshin Memory Technologies, have amplified uncertainties. He noted that Korea's market is especially vulnerable due to its high concentration of retail investors. In response, financial authorities will review the overall market structures, including single-stock leveraged ETFs and derivative mechanics.
The primary trigger was the introduction of leveraged ETFs in late May. Capital heavily concentrated into major semiconductor stocks, namely Samsung Electronics and SK hynix. Consequently, any drop in these key chip makers directly translated into severe volatility across the broader KOSPI market.
Meanwhile, Kim also emphasized that Korea must respond to the structural shocks by strengthening national R&D and making timely semiconductor investments, while financial regulators move to revamp market stabilization tools. Baek Joo-hee, Arirang News.
The relentless heat wave continues unabated here in Korea, with the scorching daytime temperatures and tropical nights offering little relief. Our Park Jae-ryung tells us more.
People are lining the banks of the Cheonggyecheon stream in central Seoul, dipping their feet in the water to temporarily forget the deadly heat. As of 6 a.m. Wednesday, heat wave alerts were in effect across most of the country. The warnings covered large parts of the nation, while advisories remained in place in several other areas. A small number of locations were under the highest level heat wave emergency warning. People are struggling to cope with the relentless heat.
I think today is the hottest it's been lately. I can't go anywhere without a parasol. I've only been walking for a minute or two since getting off the bus, but I'm already sweating. It's really hot.
It is very hot. We're from Florida, and this heat is still more intense than Florida. We are just constantly sweating and having to drink water. It's very hot.
The heat not only feels uncomfortable, but it is also life-threatening. According to the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency, at least 9 people have died and nearly 1,500 cases of heat-related illness have been reported since mid-May. The weekly figure had remained at around 100 or below for nearly 2 months. But in the week of July 10th to July 16th, the number jumped from 75 to 452, which is an increase of just over 500%. It fell to 225 the following week, but another 287 cases were reported in just 4 days before July 24th and 27th. The most severe conditions have been concentrated in the southern regions. In Gyeongsangnam-do province, a heatwave emergency warning was issued as the temperature was forecast to feel as hot as 38 degrees Celsius or higher, which are levels considered potentially life-threatening. It is also reported that as of 3:30 p.m. Wednesday, Yangsan in Gyeongsangnam-do province exceeded 40 degrees.
The government urged people to avoid all non-essential outdoor activities or work. It also advised people to move to air-conditioned or shadowed areas and drink a lot of water and take frequent breaks. Park Chae-ryung, Arirang News.
Rescue operations are continuing in Japan after a powerful earthquake struck Kumamoto Prefecture on Tuesday. Experts say the latest quake is believed to have originated along the same fault zone that caused the deadly quakes a decade ago. Our Park Kwon-woo reports.
At least 13 people have been confirmed dead after a powerful earthquake struck Japan's southern Kumamoto Prefecture on Tuesday. The earthquake caused widespread destruction and prompted a major rescue operation, leaving people injured and triggering fires, power outages, and significant damage to roads, bridges, and buildings.
I offer my deepest condolences to those who have lost their lives and to their bereaved families. Even now, there are people waiting to be rescued, and this is a race against time. We will marshal all available resources on the ground to save and rescue as many people as possible.
Takaichi urged residents to protect themselves and evacuate to safe locations as strong aftershocks continue. Around 300,000 people have been told to evacuate, while hundreds of self-defense force personnel have been deployed. One of the hardest hit sites was the prefecture's largest shopping mall, the Aeon Mall, where there was an explosion after the quake, although the government said the exact cause of the blast and the building's partial collapse remains under investigation. Footage from the scene showed that part of the mall had collapsed, exposing steel beams and scattering debris across the parking lot as firefighters and rescue crews searched for survivors. The earthquake also caused widespread power outages and ruptured roads across Kumamoto, a region devastated by a series of major earthquakes a decade ago. The 2016 disaster began with a magnitude 6.5 quake, followed 2 days later by a magnitude 7.3 earthquake, leaving around 270 people dead. According to Japan's Asahi and Yomiuri newspapers, experts believe Wednesday's earthquake was triggered by activity along the Hinago fault zone, which was also blamed for the initial quake 10 years ago. Experts also warned that a stronger quake could follow, just as it did a decade ago. As of 4 p.m. Wednesday, the South Korean Consulate General in Fukuoka said no casualties involving Korean nationals had been reported. The Foreign Ministry said it's closely monitoring the situation and will take all necessary steps to ensure the safety of Korean nationals in Japan. Park Kwon-woo, Arirang News.
In other news, U.S. President Donald Trump has marked the 73rd anniversary of the Korean War armistice by reaffirming the U.S.-South Korea alliance and also warning against what he called a renewed communist threat. Kim Do-yeon has the details.
U.S. President Donald Trump has reaffirmed the steadfast alliance between Seoul and Washington, describing it as, quote, a pillar of peace and stability across the Indo-Pacific. In a message marking the 73rd anniversary of the Korean War armistice on July 27th, the U.S. leader honored the courage of American forces who fought to defend South Korea, noting the staggering cost of over 135,000 U.S. casualties. He emphasized that the two nations remain, quote, united in a steadfast alliance, tested by shared sacrifice, and bound by an abiding love of freedom. President Trump also used the occasion to deliver a stern warning against the resurgence of communist ambitions, stating, quote, the same communist ambition that once sought to conquer the Korean peninsula is trying to rear its ugly head once more, this time in the West. His remarks on communism spreading in the West align with his strategy for the upcoming November midterm elections. The president has intensified his rhetoric against the ideology, recently targeting the Democratic Party over what he says is its growing Democratic Socialist faction. Notably absent from this year's message were specific references to North Korea. Last year's statement highlighted his administration's maximum pressure campaign aimed at securing denuclearization, the release of American hostages, and the repatriation of U.S. military remains. Also omitted this year was any mention of his historic 2019 Panmunjom meeting, where he became the first sitting U.S. president to cross the demilitarized zone into North Korean territory. President Trump first established National Korean War Veterans Armistice Day in 2017 during his first term, issuing annual proclamations to mark the occasion through 2020. He closed this year's statement by paying tribute to the fallen and recalling the inscription at the Korean War Veterans Memorial that says, "Freedom is not free." Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Tensions in the Middle East have flared once again after the U.S. military said it intercepted an Iranian missile attack on U.S. forces. Our Do Young-eun has this report.
The U.S. military and Saudi Arabia's armed forces conducted precision strikes against Iran-aligned militant groups in Iraq on Wednesday. According to U.S. Central Command, the operation was carried out in response to attacks on U.S. forces and Saudi energy infrastructure allegedly directed by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. CENTCOM said U.S. and Saudi fighter aircraft struck multiple logistics and weapon sites in eastern Iraq after more than 30 drone attacks over the past 72 hours. The command warns that Iran and its proxy groups must halt such attacks to avoid further U.S. military action. Earlier, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said it launched multiple ballistic missiles in what CENTCOM described as an attempted surprise attack on U.S. forces in the Middle East. The U.S. military said the attack took place on Tuesday and that all incoming missiles were successfully intercepted, and that the U.S. forces remain vigilant and at a high state of readiness. CENTCOM did not disclose any locations of targets, while Axios said Iran launched the ballistic missiles at U.S. military targets in Jordan. Earlier that day, Saudi Arabia also said it had intercepted and destroyed drones targeting petroleum facilities in the country's eastern region. The renewed hostilities come just a day after U.S. President Donald Trump spoke of very friendly negotiations with Iran, despite Tehran denying that any such talks are taking place. Do Young-eun, Arirang News.
Heatwave alerts have also expanded and intensified across most of the country. Seoul has now been upgraded from a heatwave advisory back to a heatwave warning. In many areas in the south, feels like highs climbed above 38 degrees Celsius, putting them around normal body temperature. So please stay hydrated, as it's one of the best ways to protect yourself in this kind of heat. And the heat isn't letting up after sunset. Seoul has now gone through 7 consecutive tropical nights, while Jeju Island has been stuck in nighttime heat for more than 3 weeks. With tropical nights continuing in many parts of the country, it's important to keep your room cool and make sure you get enough sleep. Tomorrow, Seoul will start the day at 26 degrees Celsius, Daejeon 25 and Jeju 27 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 34 degrees, while both Daegu and Gyeongju will soar to 37 degrees. Looking ahead, skies will stay mostly sunny with this relentless heat continuing nationwide. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
That's all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.